installation of a really cool product inside my local hobby shop. Let's go. Welcome back to Innovation RC, guys. We are going to be installing the brand new PPS twin motor mount today and all the center diff housing stuff. I guess that's what you want to call it. I'm going to show you guys how to install all of this here. And we have twin 1721 2400 kV Speedrun motors from Castle Creations. Now, this is a crazy, wicked setup. Now, if you guys want any of this beautiful artwork going into your build, make sure you check out PPSRC or practicalproto.com. They will have every single thing that you need regarding what we're going to discuss today for your car. Definitely check it out. Alrighty guys, now if that seems interesting, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe for more. Now if you want to stay up to date on this wicked build, make sure you follow Innovation RC on Instagram. We'll have more pictures, videos, and other updates on there before it drops on YouTube. Definitely do so. Really quick guys, let me know in the comments what two motors you would run in your ultimate dream build. Let me know. Whoa. Alrighty, I just went back in time and everything is back in where it originally came in. I mean, obviously I just put it back in so I could show you. All right, now as for the tools that we're gonna need, we are only gonna need on the side because there's a couple Allen keys that we're gonna need to save for future reference already inside that kit, and I'm gonna explain that later in this video. We have blue Loctite, 2.5, a 3mm and a 2mm Allen drive. I would not recommend using a screw gun, mainly because when it comes to metal and really precise work, you really want to be sure you hand tighten everything in a certain order, and I'm going to get into that additionally. We have our center spool, and of course I'm sure all of you guys have that. And we have two pinion gears, and yes, they do need to be the same. Obviously we're running two like motors. Now as far as motors go, I chose twin 1721 2400 kV Speedrun motors from Castle Creations. Now those motors are extremely high RPM. The only downside to that is that it draws a lot of amperage, but hey, when we have two motors, amperage is technically split in half. And we are also going to undo this. Now if you guys could see, we have our twin motor mount. Both the slides are in there, everything is included. We have different slide bolts, which are also definitely strange if you don't know how they go. I'm going to get into that. We have additional motor mount bolts that we have Allen keys. This is all going to be built for a future project. This project will not come out anytime soon because I'm waiting on a chassis and just a bunch of other things. Builds like this do not take overnight or in, let's say, a week. I'm going to take all the time that I need to make sure everything is right. All right, so I'm going to take the motor mount out, and I'm also going to categorize all the screws, washers, and bolts, and everything that you need to know, and I'm going to go over that. Additionally, I'm also going to take the motors out. And there we go, guys. We have our two beauties, biscuits and gravy, peanut butter and jelly, whatever you want to call them. I might go with peanut butter and jelly. All right, so this is going to be the piece of paper that I'm going to use. Obviously, I want it white so it could contrast perfectly of everything of what you're going to want to see. So there's going to be 4 of these 3mm button head bolts. Now, this is what goes into the slide of the motor that hold the motor onto the motor mount slide. What do we have over here? All right, these are going to be our little Allen keys. Now these are kind of oddball. I don't know exactly what size they are, but it's between 3 and 5mm Allen keys. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but you're going to need to hold on to these because this is how you're going to be able to adjust your mesh on the slide. This is going to be your Grub lock, Grub screw looking thing. Now this is actually what holds the bolt from going in and out. This is what locks your motor slide into place, guaranteeing a perfect mesh not to be moved when you're running. Now these bolts are actually to hold the motor mount onto the chassis. So obviously 1, 2, 3, and 4 goes right on like that. Pretty simple. There's just a few washers over there. I'll get into exactly where they go. They're just washers. They do what washers do. Now these are all of our bolts over here, and we have the one lone bolt over here I'm gonna get to shortly. Additionally, we have these slide bolts. These are really long, and it depends on which one you're going to go with, depending on what gearing you're going to run on your setup. Alrighty, tighty, lefty, loosey. Step 1, let's take our 2.5mm. Let's just loosen these guys up. Not a lot, just enough to where you could move the slide, just like that. Loosen. Now keep in mind, I am actually not going to be using Loctite on these bolts because we have our Grub lock that's going to lock everything in place and guarantee these things to not move. I don't know why, I just like doing this. It's just entertaining. All right, so we are going to start off by doing our center differential hold down that goes on top of the mount, and the front center differential holder as well, which is that thing right there. As you can see, there are two different sizes. We have one short and one thick. Now this guy is going to go right over here, right where you see this little ledge. That's where the gears go. If you were to be using, let's say, a center diff, the gears are going to be pushed more towards the mount. So the mount is obviously going to have more beef on it. That's where we're actually going to want to put this one. We have our Loctite, our 2mm, and we have one of our 2mm flathead countersunk bolts. What I'm going to want to do is put a little dab of Loctite on that. We're just going to go in like that. I like to have it dangle just so it naturally gets in a certain way without anything being taut. Now what I also like to do, I do not like to tighten it all the way right now. What I really like to do is just loosen it until everything is back together, then we lock it down. Now we actually have to make sure that the shorter portion of this goes out. You guys can see that there's an elevation gap over here. The smaller portion goes out. And then on this one, you guys can see it over here, this side goes out too. Load up our little countersunk bolt, put that in there. This goes out, if you guys remember. Have it dangle, loosely tighten it just so it takes form and it doesn't move. Just like that. So now it can still move, but we have our center differential hold down all built. So this goes on top just like that. This is done. Now we're up to mounting peanut butter and jelly. We're actually going to mount them a certain way. So we see all these bolt holes over here. Now, is there a certain way to do it? No. But when running twin motors, I'm going to try to get it almost as identical as possible. And we're going to be using those 4 bolts right over there. Here we go. So we can see our mount is still over like this. Now, these are actually going to be using the 25mm bolt pattern. So it's not going to be using this wider one all the way up here, and that one is going to be using this and this right here. So this is actually the same exact size as the 1717. So we're going to want to use, as you guys can see here, flat, 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 those bolts here, here, there, and there. Goes on just like that. Now you don't want to obviously do it at the same time. I just ironically put it there. Now here's our 3mm bolt. Put a dab of Loctite on it. Going to align it correctly. And that's one. Alrighty, so that is one in there, and it isn't in there too tight because we still got to get the other side on. So make sure you're very, very patient when it comes to this stuff. Here's the other side. Just like that. So we now have peanut butter mounted, and they are not torqued down yet. I just want to make sure everything is in there, and then I'm going to torque it down a little bit tighter. Alright, now here is the first bolt for jelly, and we're just going to put this in right here. Again, not too tight because I still need to adjust for the other side. All right, there you go. Now that they're pretty much in, you could apply a little bit of torque to them. Look at that, peanut butter and jelly all happy in there. Very, very nice. I just love this mount. It's so cool. All right, so now we're looking at the side of this right here. Now, it depends on what gearing you're going to run as to what bolt you're going to have to put in there. Alrighty, so here are the instructions. This is going to tell you what bolt to use. You guys can see that the smaller one is going to be obviously for a lesser amount of teeth. If you have a large gear rate, I mean, doesn't matter what the ratio is, but if you have a large pinion, large spur, you're going to have to use the longer one. Obviously, we're using a 34 tooth as the pinion. Hint, hint. But honestly, you're really still going to have to be careful no matter what. So we really don't have too large of a gearing regarding teeth or how many teeth there are, so we don't need the really long bolt. We can use the shorter bolt on this one. Now you guys can see that there are 2 different washers over here. This golden one, there's only going to be 2 of these in the whole kit. There's going to be 4 of these black ones. Now if you guys can see right over here, you see our 2 shorter bolts. We're going to want to put one of these golden washers on, oh, I missed. Right there, and that's all you do. And we're gonna want to put it into here. I would say honestly, just start the threads, and yes, this is going to be the smaller Allen key that is supplied for you in here. So just start it, because it's nothing you want to like put all the way in and adjust, because you're still going to have to adjust it for whatever your ratio is going to be. Now let's get peanut butter side, and here's going to be the other golden spacer washer thing right over here. Again, the supplied Allen key. I have Butterfingers, and we are good. So now we have our bolt that the grub lock is actually going to hold onto installed, and that was pretty easy as it is. Alrighty guys, it's time to spool. Now to install this, obviously we're going to want to put it in here, but it's just not going to want to stay in. Now if you guys remember the center diff housing holder or the cover, we're going to want to put this thicker end directly into the top. Now we have our previously supplied button head bolts. What I normally like to do is just start them by hand, just so it could stay in here. Just like that. And we're going to take our 2.5, not all the way, but just enough to where it holds it and it's not going to go anywhere. Just like that. And there we go, we have our center differential already installed. But obviously this is not where it's going to have to end. I think that looks like a much better angle for you guys. Hopefully you could see much better with my angle correction looking directly at you. Alrighty, so now we have our front differential holder. We're going to want to put it here, and again, no Loctite, although yes, you should definitely go back and do it. All I am doing is mocking it up just to be sure that the center diff stays in, so we could mount our pinion gear so we can mesh it correctly. Obviously we cannot mesh anything correctly unless that center diff is in and like really secure, so we got to do this. Now it looks like something. Look how beautiful that is. Now we can mesh our pinion gears and we could install them on the motors. Now real quick guys, when you mesh a pinion gear to a spur gear, well, with some of you I am sure you already know, but we're gonna have to go through this to ensure that everything is good. Obviously when you get your gear mesh, there's two things that you really need to look out for. One, you don't want the pinion gear to be like that. You don't want it to use half of the other gear to really go, and you're gonna risk blowing out a tooth or stripping something. You do not want that. Make sure the gear is as center as possible. I'm not even sure if I could do it by hand right now, but you want it as center as possible. And now as for gear mesh, if we could look up close, you need a little bit of click. A little bit of click. So this is what we're going to try to do. I'm going to get the best close-up shot that I can possibly do for you guys. Hopefully it does you justice. I prefer to have everything set as equal as possible. It may not seem like anything, but in all reality, it could cause something in the future. If you guys could see, the flat spot of the motors, I want perfectly straight up. All right, so we're going to want to thread lock our longer grub screw so that it could go into the longer side of the well, the flat spot. So it needs to be longer to compensate the height difference with the flat spot. Just screw this in right over here, and I am going to make sure I'm going to just push this in all the way to where it actually hits the spool gear, and make sure it is as flat as possible, just like that. So I could feel over here. Really hope you guys can see. So we could see it is completely flat between gear and gear. So now this one is good. We still need to adjust it out though, so we need to do our gear mesh. I'm actually going to insert the supplied Allen key, and I'm just going to screw it in until I actually start to see it move the whole slide. Oh, there we go. Now it's actually sliding it in. Now we're actually going to want to take two of these black washers, and we're going to want to put them into the side. Now it's not locked in because we did not use the grub lock. So the grub lock is going to prevent it from going out, not in. In is what the top of the slide is actually going to do. So what I am going to do is carefully put the grub screw on here, and I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite around here. Just like that, and now I'm going to insert it on the other side. You might have to hold your finger on it just so it could catch the thread or something. There you go, now it's in. All right, now this is in. Now it's tight, but it's not hulkingly tight, so you don't really want to over tighten it or anything like that. Now it's not going to come out or go in. It's pretty much locked in there. Now we're actually going to want to tighten these two bolts right here. 1, 2. Now you don't really want these crazy tight because the grub lock's already holding it in pretty darn well. This is just here for extra security, and it is no possible way going to move out. Now I hope you guys can see this gear mesh. Now you guys can see the proper spacing, hopefully at this angle. It's not too far and it's not too close. It is just right, and you got to be sure that you do it on both. And before you forget, just like me, make sure you also tighten the other grub screw if the pinion gear that you use is going to have 2 grub screws. Don't need a lot of Loctite on it, but you're just going to need enough to tighten it down. All right, so 2 bolts meshed right, everything is kosher, we are good to go on to peanut butters. If you guys can see, the flat spot is up over here. I'm going to do the same exact thing with this one, and everything is just going to be the same exactly as I did before. So now what I like to do, I like to actually hold the center diff or the spool, and I like just doing one at a time. So this side is good, this side is good, and they seem pretty dead on with each other. It's not going to be exact. You got to pretty much try to copy it as close as possible when it comes to dual setups, because you don't want to run into any issues in the drive line. You really got to be careful on that. And last but not least, we're going to want to tighten down the top of the motor slide. Now they're all locked in, and we have our mesh all solid. Now to make sure you did it right, flat and flat spot. You guys could probably see it right here. Everything is all synced and very nice, just like this. Pretty good. All right, so I have my little stick of light. Now you guys are gonna see the gear mesh between both of the gears. Now this is what I would really recommend you guys to shoot for. If I could get a zoom in up on this, you can see that. And then if you guys could see that too, that just feels amazing. That is so cool. It's just a really cool mechanism, in all honesty. It's just really cool to just even build something like this. It's kind of like expensive Legos. Now we are left with the last 4 bolts that were not installed, obviously because they have to go into the chassis. Now we're not going to be installing the whole motor mount into the chassis just yet, because one, I am still waiting on a carbon chassis to come, and waiting on that chassis is just going to take a while, so I'm really not going to be installing onto a chassis today. Now if you guys notice, there are 4 holes in the box in which it came in. I would have never guessed what these are really for. Now it is super slick, super sly, and I would have never guessed it. Well, obviously now you guys probably know exactly what it's for. You can see they line up perfectly individually. Now the single mount only has 1, 2, and 3, and it mounts perfectly in the OEM, on the OEM chassis and all that. But we have a dual mount. There is no chassis yet to actually fit this mount. So this is actually a stencil. Now to mount it perfectly, obviously you're going to want to take the bolts out. I would recommend putting the bolts back in lightly, and then you're just going to want to drill your hole over there. So now we have bolt, 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 and now we have our 4th bolt. Now, not all the time I can do things perfectly like a CNC machine does. Now, although I might screw up a couple times, and let's say something that's straight might not be as straight, this last bolt right here, guys, this is what I will call a compensation bolt. Now, if you are a little bit off with your hole and it doesn't line up perfectly, you could actually make the hole a little bit bigger, and then you can use this bolt, because being that it's basically just using a washer, so it's still going to be able to do its part and hold on there. Now this is only just in case if you really mess up the chassis and let's say there's no possible way. Obviously you're going to want to use this wider bolt or just a washer. You do need to know that if you do use a button head or anything that protrudes off of the chassis, keep in mind there is a chance of snag, so you're really going to want to make sure you take your time. Alrighty guys, if you're just about as hyped as me, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more. This is going to be a huge project that is actually going to take some time, so bear with me on it and stay tuned. This is going to be an absolute beast of a monster of anything that I could ever think of, and I'm going to do my absolute best in doing this. Hopefully everything goes well. And I do really appreciate the owner of RC Boca Hobbies in South Florida for allowing me to use the hobby shop after hours. I really appreciate it. It really helps when doing videos like these, and I'm just thankful to be able to use it. Alrighty guys, make sure you stay tuned for this wicked build. And as always, stay safe and have a good one.